From Big Ideas, Algebra 1. Chapter 1.7 deals with solving for variables in equations or formulas, and that alludes to that we'll probably have multiple variables in an equation where we have to isolate for one in terms of the other or in terms of a fair number of other variables. So in exercises 1 through 6, solve the literal equation for y. So we want to isolate for y. We're going to get y by itself. So we find y. What are the two things that are happening? It's being 9x is being subtracted and 3 is being multiplied. We tend to want to get rid of things being added and subtracted first. So we're going to get rid of that negative 9x by adding 9x to both sides. That gives us 3y equals 9x plus 24. Notice that I didn't write 24 plus 9x. We're going to write our equations or our expressions on each side of the equation in standard form, variable before the constant, 9x before the 24. And then we have 3 multiplying y, so we will divide by 3. This leaves us with y equals 9x plus 24 over 3. And we must, you must simplify this. And the reason why you must simplify this is each of the terms have a common factor of each other. They have a common factor. Doesn't have to be that it goes in evenly. It has a common number that is divisible into all 3 of those values. So we are going to reduce it by 3, and you get 3x plus 8. And that is going to be isolating y in terms of x. And just as an important information, if you want to understand why we're reducing this, 9x plus 24 over 3 can be written 9x over 3 plus 24 over 3. And this gets reduced to 3x. This gets reduced to 8. That's why, and that's how we get that. So very important that we reduce it. A situation where you maybe wouldn't is 5x plus 15 over 3. So if you have something like that, some teachers are going to allow you to leave that, but that is already simplified. The answer, this does not equal 5x plus 5. That does not. That is wrong. We can't just simplify the 3 and the 15 because that 3 is also under the 5x. And we would see that if we broke this down into the 2 statements. So we notice that that 3 is under both terms in the numerator. So an acceptable answer alternative, so this is, let's move these devil signs. So this is acceptable. This is okay. Doesn't need to be simplified, or we can write this as an alternative answer. This is also okay, but this would be wrong, okay? So both of those okays are acceptable. You should talk to your high school teacher, see what format do they want you to simplify here. Do they, I don't want that in red. Do they want you to simplify that or not? And that'll be up to them. And you'll find that some teachers are a little bit different on what they want. Mr. Mack will take either one. That is fine. But I definitely would not allow 9x plus 24 over 3. I don't know many teachers that would accept that. That needs to be simplified. That needs to be simplified. Good. So just something to understand. We again have things happening to my variable y. I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. I'm left with negative 2y. Don't forget that negative equals 36 divided by negative 2 and we get y equals negative 18. Interesting one because there are no secondary variables. Make sure you simplify, make sure you keep track of those negatives. I'm going to move the 9. That leaves me with 3x minus 4 equals negative 4y. Don't forget that negative. Divide everything by negative 4, which gives you 3x over negative 4 plus 1 equals y. And let's show an alternative one. So you get 3x minus 4 equals negative 4y. Let's divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4, and you would write 3x minus 4 over negative 4 equals y. I would accept that. I would accept this. Both are the same answers, and I would also accept this. I would accept this with the negative up in the numerator or out in the side. So we're going to isolate y, so we're going to add the 5x. 7y equals 13x plus 7. And I'm going to divide by 7. You can get y equals 13x plus 7 over 7. Or you would get y equals 13x over 7 plus 1. Both are okay. Don't give me or problems on an assessment. Pick a solution, pick a answer, and commit to it. Don't give me ors or ands unless there's definitely two different solutions. As we talk about absolute values, you will have two solutions. Solve it literally. My y is already there, so I'm going to get rid of that 3 by subtracting 3. I get 1/5 y equals 2x plus 1. And now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm not going to divide by 1/5. I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. And I need to multiply both things by 5. That's the tricky part of this. So we'll get 10x plus 5. A lot of students would write 2x plus 5. They would only multiply the 5 times the 1. This is wrong. That is not the answer. You have to multiply the 5 times the 2x and times the 1. What you do to one side, you do to all the things on the other side. Let's subtract 10x. Or not 10x, let's subtract 10, hello. Negative 1/3 y equals, I'm going to write 6x minus 6 because I want it to be in standard form. Form minus 10 is negative 6. And then I, again, am going to multiply by the reciprocal. That leaves me with y. I'm going to distribute that negative 3 multiplying to both of those terms, and that's going to give me negative 18x plus 18. And that'll give me my final answer. Solve the literal equation for x. Now we're trying to do x. We should notice that I have 2x values in two different terms. That's going to be challenging. I can't combine these because they're not like terms. So how can I get those x's together? I'm going to do the trick or treat, and I'm going to take a common candy bar from both of those terms. And we notice the candy bar that they have in common is x, and that's what I want to combine. If I take an x from 4x, that leaves me with 4. Does not leave me with 3x. I'm not subtracting, I'm factoring, which is a form of division. And if I take an x from 5xy, that leaves me with 5y. And notice Chewbacca is in. Yep. It's okay, Chewie. And now I've got my variable x. It's being multiplied by 4 plus 5y. And we're going to divide both sides by 4 plus 5y. Divide both sides by 4 plus 5y. And that leaves me with g over, I'm going to write 5y plus 4 because standard form is the proper way. Variables come before constants, and that would be the correct answer. We again, wow, they are really being sticklers here. So I'm going to factor out an x. That leaves me with 4a minus 9. Divide by 4a minus 9. Divide by 4a minus 9. We're left with w over 4a minus 9 equals x. And we notice that, oh, I can do these real quick now. I see how to do it. It's because you continue to practice. We have two x's, but I also have this constant, so I'm going to move this constant first. I'm going to get that out of the way. And then that leaves me with 6x plus px, and now I'm going to factor out that x. Now that I have my two x's on the same side, I'm going to factor out that x. That leaves me with 6 plus p. I'm going to divide both sides by 6 plus p, divide by 6 plus p, and that gives me z minus 2 over p plus 6 equals x. Here's the other thing. You cannot cancel the negative 2 and 6. Even though they have a common factor of 2, I cannot simplify those because they're being added and subtracted. The answer is not going to be, that is wrong also. You cannot simplify the 2 and the 6. The correct answer is this. I'm going to minus that 10 from both sides. I'm going to get rid of that constant. Leaves me with, that looks like a 12, minus 10. So t minus 10 equals 7x minus qx. I'm going to factor out an x now. If I take an x, that's 7 minus q. Little tricky part here coming up. We'll divide by 7 minus q, divide by 7 minus q. And I'm going to write t minus 10. I'm going to put my variable first. And when I write my variable, notice the negative in front of the q stays with it, and the 7 stays positive. A lot of students would write q minus 7. This is not q minus 7. That's a positive 7 and a negative q. So when I rewrite it, that q has to stay negative. And I can't simplify any further. Okay, the x's, so I'm going to factor out the x. I get a minus b equals k. Divide by a minus b. That was really easy. X equals k over a minus b. Nice simple one. They started with the hard ones and saved the easy ones for last. We're going to minus s, because I want to get my x's by itself. So p minus s equals qx plus rx. Let's factor out an x. That leaves me with q plus r. Let's divide by q plus r. P minus s over q plus r equals x. Nice problem. Let's move that 11. Negative 4x minus 3jx equals w minus 11. Factor out the x. That's negative 4 minus 3j equals w minus 11. Divide by negative 4 minus 3j. Divide by negative 4 minus 3j. X equals w minus 11 over negative 3j minus 4. I'm putting both the numerator and denominator in standard form. Variables before constants. Oh yeah, dude. Nice. You want to put it right there? Thank you very much. That looks good. And Francie's on there, right? That's a Bishop Montgomery sign that I can't wait to put up. Solve the literal equation. I'm going to get rid of that constant that's hidden in between there. X plus 3vx equals y plus 8. I'm going to factor out the x. Ooh, this is tricky. If I take x from x, I'm not left with 0. I'm left with 1. Remember, it's like a form of division. And if we distribute it back out, we should make sure that we end up with that statement above. X times 1 is x. X times 3v is 3vx. So that's how we check and make sure that we did it correctly. Equals y plus 8. Let's divide by 1 plus 3v. Divide by 1 plus 3v. X equals y plus 8 over 3v plus 1. Standard form. Describe and correct the error. So not only describe, but we have to correct it. And we have to solve it. So what happened here? Oh, I see. They took an x. They took an x from these three terms, and D doesn't have an x. D doesn't have a common factor of x. So we can't do that. So if we're going to correct it, now we're going to correct it. So we have k equals ax plus bx plus d. How might we fix it? Well, we'll move the d first. And we will get k minus d equals ax plus bx. And now we're going to factor out an x, because a and b have that common factor. Then we'll divide by a plus b, divide by a plus b, and we get, let's see how many people get the right answer here, negative d plus k over a plus b equals x. What? Why'd you switch those? Alphabetical order. D comes before k, so we have to write that in front of it. That's the best answer, so we all have the same exact solutions. Simple interest, I love it. Solve for t. So we have I equals principal times rate times time. We want to solve for t. So we're just going to get rid of those p and r because they're multiplying. Both are multiplying. So we get interest, it's a horrible I. Interest divided by principal times rate will equal your time. Whoa, that's an interesting thought. Money over money times a rate will give you a time length. Wow, that's weird. Volume equals length times width times height. Big B. Let's solve for W. So we are going to get rid of the L and the H because they're both multiplying. We can do them together because they're both multiplying. You have to be careful. Volume divided by length and height will give you your width. These are common formulas. Solve for B. Can't get to B because Chewbacca. Yes, I can't get to that. So I have 1/2 times the quantity A plus B plus C. So I got to get rid of that 1/2 by multiplying by 2, by the reciprocal. I'm not going to divide by 1/2. That's lazy math. That's not 2s equals the 1/2 and 2 cancel each other. You're left with A plus B plus C. And we're trying to get B by itself, so we'll subtract A. Technically, you can also subtract C at the same time if you want to be really efficient. 2s, technically negative A minus C plus 2s equals B. That's how I would write it. You'd probably see more people write 2s minus A minus C. Coulomb's law is given by the formula F equals K times q sub 1 times q sub 2 over d squared. Oh, you got some subscripts and some superscripts. The force between two charges, q sub 1 and q sub 2 in a vacuum, is proportional to the product of the charges and is inversely proportional to the square of the distance d between two charges. What? When will you learn about inverse and directly and inversely? Probably algebra 2, maybe late algebra 1. So you have this, you don't have to necessarily understand what's going on in the problem or the formula. You just know that you want to solve for k, which is kind of easy because it's being multiplied by, k is being multiplied by q sub 1 times q sub 2 over d squared. So I just got to multiply by the reciprocal, d squared over q sub 1 times q sub 2. That's going to get rid of everything. We do it to both sides. D squared over q sub 1, q sub 2. Sub is different than superscript and subscript. So that gives me d squared f divided by q sub 1, q sub 2 should equal k. That wasn't too hard. You deposit $800 in an account that earns simple interest at an annual rate of 5%. How long must you leave the money in the account to earn $100 of interest? Interest equals principal times rate times time. So we know that I have $100 of interest. That's going to go in for I. I know my percent, my rate is 5%. And I know that my initial principal is P. And I know how long it's looking for T. So let's solve that. So I is 100. P is 800. R, we're not going to write it as a percent because we can't simplify percent. So we're going to convert that percent to a decimal. And then we solve for T. And then we're looking for T. So I'm going to simplify before moving things. 800 times 0.05 is probably going to give me 40. I think it's 40. 800 divided by 0.05. I divided. Mr. Mack was not very smart. See that mistake? I saw a number that I wasn't expecting. I'm expecting 40. So stop. Don't just write that number 1,600 or whatever, 16,000, because that's what the calculator says. No, I made a mistake. I hit dividing by instead of multiplying. It says 800 times 0.05, and I was expecting 40. And I was correct. I love it. Divide by 40. And we are going to get, well, we can get 10/4 equals T, which doesn't really, no. 10/4, which is 5/2, which equals T. But again, 2.5 years. 2.5 years. I have units. It's a word problem. Word problems tend to want to include years. How long must you leave the money in the account? And yes, T, that doesn't tell you that it's annual. Well, annual is yearly. So I guess you got to know, that's not a given, that when you deal with interest equals principal rate times time, that T is going to be in years. So that's a little bit tricky. And hopefully those are all the answers that I gave you. Yeah, notice that they didn't put it in standard form. Most of the time these math books aren't as particular as your teachers. That's not great. That should be in standard form. Bunch of standard forms. Let's see. Yeah, 2s minus a minus c. Told you they read it like that. And 2.5 years. Let's go. We love being right. Good luck in preparing for the test. Quiz.